Welcome to the Excruciating Minutiae Podcast, where we obsess about sports, pop culture, and politics, but mostly sports. Here are your hosts, Randy and Steven.
Good afternoon again, everybody. I'm Randy, and I'll be joined shortly by Steven. Welcome to Excruciating Minutia, where we'll be talking today about movies. Actually, movies for 2019. We'll be looking at the first half of the year. I'd say January through June, though we're pretty much almost through January, which is typically a dumping ground for movies a lot of times. So not really so much as what's been passed, but there's a lot of things coming out between February and June. A lot of it's stuff we've kind of already seen before, and that's going to be one of the topics we'll be delving into. But lots of big movies, lots of big budget movies, lots of blockbuster movies, some remakes, some live action adaptations, a lot of different things out there. Steven, I know there's a lot you're going to be looking forward to. I guess the best way we can do it is maybe just start and go chronologically for the most part. I think we'll leave one movie to the end because there's one really big blockbuster that's on this list for the upcoming 5 months, and that's probably going to be Avengers Endgame. That's probably your big monster movie of the year and of the summer. And I think we can probably save that one for last, even though technically it's not the last one on the chronological order that we have here. We had a couple releases in January, and you didn't really see anything in January that we even need to talk about in retrospect, did you?
No, movies that I saw this month typically were movies that came out last month that I just didn't get a chance to see. But there was nothing that came out. Like you said, it's a dumping ground. You know, The Upside came out, Glass came out. Those were the two biggies. I was not a big fan of any of those prior M. Night Shyamalan movies. So I watched like maybe the first one, but I did not see any after that. So I had no interest in seeing Glass.
Shyamalama Ding Dong. Is that was there the song about him, I believe, right? Well, Unbreakable was years ago and was not a bad movie. And touching on a previous podcast, it was technically a superhero movie about superheroes in a real world type of situation, and was a really good movie. Pretty good movie it was before Shyamalan went off the rails, when he was still early Shyamalan. It wasn't a bad movie. Then he had talked about making a sequel to it for a number of years. So the backstory is it just never got done. Then the movie Split came out, I believe last year, with James McAvoy, and it got good reviews. And the twist is that it was tied in. There was a cameo by Bruce Willis as his character from Unbreakable at the end of the movie that tied the two together as being put in the same universe. And then Shyamalan admitted afterwards that this was kind of a unofficial sequel to Unbreakable. And the reaction, both critical and commercial, to Split led to the making of Glass, which has not been as well reviewed by critics. What is that, a 36% rating, I believe, on Rotten Tomatoes right now? It's got a better audience. I mean, the audience score is 77%, so the audience is better. And I'm never a big, huge fan sometimes of critic scores because they tend to like things sometimes that the general audience doesn't, vice versa. But I read the reviews, and it just seemed like it was a movie that was going to make me jump out and go see it, which is a little disappointing. That is the end of that trilogy. Apparently, that wraps everything up from what I've read without seeing the movie. And I don't think we'll have any real spoilers here, particularly since none of these movies otherwise have come out. But not exactly must-see movie watching in the month of January. And that was probably the only thing of real note that came out. February, however, we'll see a few new properties. Again, February, not a big month. You really don't see the big movies start cranking out until March or April. February, we have What Men Want, which I believe is sort of a different take on the What Women Want Mel Gibson movie from years ago, except now it's the female who can hear what the men are thinking. So is that on your list of movies to see?
No.
That's just a short, quick no.
No desire to see that.
Did you see the original What Women Want? I don't think I remember saying that.
I did, because that was with Helen Hunt, right? It was Mel Gibson and Helen Hunt.
Helen Hunt, I
did
believe,
see
was the
it.
co-star.
I did see it. I saw it because it was on HBO back in the day.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Will I never see What Men Want? I'll probably at some point see it, but I'm not going to the movie theater to go see it. It's just not necessary. So
I'm sitting at home and I'm flipping through the channels and my wife is sitting next to me. And as I go by, I see this on TV and my wife says, "Hey, let's watch this." And you go, "Okay." Is that what you're saying? Is that where you're putting this movie in your rankings of where we're going to see it?
I have to give her the ability to watch certain things on TV because she puts up with me watching endless amounts of sports. So sometimes there's a show on TV or there's a movie that she wants to watch, and I just have to go along and be the good husband and say, "Sure, honey, I would love to watch this with you." Not really meaning it, but
do you make her watch the sports? Or are you literally just watching on the one TV? Or
she's in the room a lot of times and she absorbs it through osmosis, but she's not really paying attention, I don't think. I mean, but she can talk a good game.
So you're telling me you actually might have the ability to watch a movie like this, but tune it out potentially. Just sort of be in the room and kind of be physically looking like you're reacting to it, but kind of like maybe be thinking about the upcoming championship game or the opening of baseball season or something.
To be honest with you, if it's a good movie, I'm a big fan of like a good rom-com. I will sit there and watch it. You know, I have no issue with it. But you know, I'm not sure this is gonna be a good movie. I haven't seen any good reviews on it, so
maybe we can rank these movies. We can have the going to see in theaters. That's your top ranking. We can have the I'll see it, but I'll wait till it hits a streaming service like Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever it is, and I'll seek it out there. And then the last tier would be the third tier would be if it shows up on TV and I'm in a position where I can watch it because I have nothing else going on. And then there's the last tier of I don't care if everything else is down and there's absolutely no entertainment. I'll find some paint a wall, and then watch it dry. Those might be the 4 tiers we could be looking at. So this is kind of like for you, like a tier 3. If it's on and I'm in the room and she's in the room, then I'll watch it. That sound, or is it a tier 2, as in she's going to be like, "Hey, let's watch this movie," and you'll go, "Okay," or is it kind of in between 2 and 3 for you?
It's probably in between 2 and 3.
This for me is probably like a 4. I'm probably not at all interested in it. And mainly because I didn't see What Women Want. I don't think I remember seeing that movie. I don't think I had any interest in it. I'm not the biggest romantic comedy movie guy. I mean, I've watched some before. I've enjoyed some before, but it's not really my thing. And I might have to be forced against my will, which is entirely possible in my household, but it might have to be forced against my will type of movie to watch. I'm not going to lie on that. So let's move on to the Lego Movie, second part. That releases on February 8th. First Lego movie, pretty big. This is starring Chris Pratt. Well, obviously all voice acting. Chris Pratt, Elizabeth Banks, Channing Tatum, Will Arnett, and others. Did you watch the first Lego Movie?
I did. It was hilarious.
It was. And so this one, first tier, second tier, third tier, fourth tier.
Probably second tier. I don't go to the movies to the theater unless I feel like there's something going to be added by going to the movie. I need to see it on the big screen. You know, I have a 65-inch screen with surround sound in my house.
That's pretty big.
Right. So do I need to go see the Lego Movie on a big screen? The answer is no. I'll wait until it comes out on a streaming service or HBO or Cinemax or one of those, and I'll watch it that way. But I'll definitely watch it.
I'm with you on that one. I'd call this a tier 2 movie for me. As you said, the first Lego Movie was very good, very well received. There's already Rotten Tomato rankings on this one as well. And I remember us talking about this prior, wondering how do you get Rotten Tomato movie rankings? But apparently some critics get a chance to see it ahead of time. There's been 24 reviews already. It's got a 92% rating. Traditionally, from what I've read, a lot of times ratings will tend to go down as you actually get closer to release and then you actually get released. But that's a good start to it. And there's a lot of people who want to see it. They have a 97% want to see on Rotten Tomatoes from the audience. It's going to do well at the box office. It's not going to have a tremendous amount of competition that at least that first couple of weeks, because it's open on the 8th. What Men Want is open on the 8th, obviously targeted at completely different audiences. And then there's not really a big movie in February. Well, there's kind of a bit, but it'll have a couple weeks where it's probably going to be, my guess, near the top of the box office. So it should do really good. But I'm kind of like you. It's not something that's going to drag me to the theater. It's not I have to see it immediately. I can probably wait till it hits a Netflix or wherever it ends up at and catch it on that one. So I'm with you. Tier 2 for that one. 2 other movies releasing the following week. I'll throw this one out as a shout out to a friend of mine who watches or is into a little bit of anime. Alita Battle Angel, which is a James Cameron produced adaptation of Japanese manga. And it had been pushed back once. Fox has decided that it was too busy in December to do it. They've pushed it now into February. Jennifer Connelly is the big name I saw in this, as Michelle Rodriguez is also in this. Live action CGI, a cyborg girl who faces her past with the help of a scientist who rescued her. I had no interest in seeing this movie. I'm not a manga fan, though I am a comic book fan. I've never really been a Japanese manga fan. I did see a trailer for it. It's directed by Robert Rodriguez, who's done some really good stuff in the past. I did see a trailer, and I actually thought the trailer looked good. So it piqued my interest. I probably would have said it would have been a level 4, where I just really didn't have any interest in seeing it. It probably now would be maybe a level 3, but again, not something I'll go see in the theater. You're not a big Japanese manga fan, are you, Steven?
I'm not, but I'm in the same boat as you. I didn't know anything about it, but the trailer was so intriguing. Plus,
you saw the trailer?
I did.
So you saw the trailer?
Yeah,
okay.
I did. And not only that, the cast is phenomenal. You know, you mentioned Jennifer Connelly. You kind of glossed over the 2 big names that are actually in the movie. Oscar winners, Mahershala Ali and Christoph Waltz, are both in the movie, and they both have won, Oscars. I mean, Mahershala Ali is a favorite for another Oscar this year. It's written by James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez. It's, all of a sudden it's got a lot of pieces that make me go, I wonder if this might be good. Robert Rodriguez, I loved Sin City. It was pretty apparent when I watched the trailer that it had very much a Robert Rodriguez feel to it. It's a mix of live action and animation.
CGI.
So it's pretty neat. I was definitely intrigued by it, and I'm definitely going to go see this.
I'll be curious to see how it does at the box office, because again, you always have these big movies that kind of dominate when they're being released and the weeks around it. And Lego Movie will be in its second week. My guess is it won't be able to take a top spot, but you never know. I mean, maybe some buzz will build on it. And I'm not sure about what its budget is, because that's always, when we're talking about movies, we're talking about profit. That's the end of the day. The movie studios want to make profit, right? I mean,
yes.
that's the name of the game. So that's a movie that, according to Box Office Mojo, it does not look like it has any sort of budget attached to it yet. It is a runtime of a little bit over 2 hours, so it's going to be it's rated PG-13. Interesting. It'll be something to maybe keep an eye on. But like you said, I had no interest. I didn't really know anything about it, and then I saw a trailer, and I was like, that has caught my attention. So, it's a 3 right now. We'll see if that changes for me at some point. But like you said, a lot of talented people involved in it. And it's funny, we've mentioned already an animated movie and something that's a blend of live action and CGI, and you're getting Oscar winners and big names in these type of movies. And that would have been unthinkable maybe 20 or 25 years ago, where a lot of big name actors and actresses would think these type of movies were beneath them. Not so much anymore, right? And that's going to lead into movies we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this.
Yep.
Another release on the 14th is Happy Death Day to You. And you are not a horror fan. I am.
I am not a horror fan. I'm not going to go see this.
I know it's a 4 for you. I know we don't even have to go any further.
It's a 5.
It's a 5. Well, I will say one thing. The first Happy Death Day I did not see. I do plan on seeing it at some point, on tracking it down. I actually saw a synopsis or a recap on a channel on YouTube called Dead Meat. And the channel is based about it does kill counts of horror movies where it counts off the victims, the number of people who get killed in the movie. But it's actually pretty much a movie review of the movie. And the guy who does the channel is outstanding. His name is James Janice, and he does this wonderful job. So anyone listening to this who likes horror movies, check out the channel on YouTube called Dead Meat. He did this particular movie, the first one, The Happy Death Day. And the premise was it was a Groundhog Day type of situation. And I know you're a huge fan of Groundhog Day. Not that this will make you go see the movie, but a lot of horror movies, it's a slasher, it's a killer or somebody. In this particular movie, it was a person who woke up, went through her day, was killed, and then woke up the next day and kept reliving it and kept dying in different ways from someone who she didn't know. So she kept trying to figure out, or using this as a mystery to try to figure out who's killing me and how do I get out of this time loop. It was a very interesting premise for a horror movie and made it unique from other horror movies that came out. So just seeing the review on it made me want to see the first one. The problem is sequels in general sometimes don't fare very well. Horror movie sequels really tend to get very bad very quickly. So this one, I'm probably going to want to see the first one and see if the review I saw and the synopsis of it kind of lives up to it, if I enjoy it. That being said, I won't go to the theater to see this most likely. This is probably going to be, I'll wait till it shows up on Netflix, and then I'll catch it late night when I have nothing else to watch type of thing.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's opening on February 14th. Who's taking their significant other to this on freaking Valentine's Day?
Maybe someone you're wanting to break up with, possibly. That could be
or kill.
That could be the one.
I mean, not somebody you're hoping to, have a romantic interlude with. That's for sure.
Now, I will say that a lot of the scheduling with things tend to be, you also see like counter scheduling where you're trying to target an audience that isn't being targeted. So if you're thinking that the Lego movie is still going to be in theaters and running strong, that has a certain target audience. That's going to be kids, a lot of which, I mean, adults will go see it too, but it's a younger audience. Alita Battle Angel, even at PG-13, is going to get teenagers, and you're looking for that and that young adult audience as well. Horror movie fans tend to look for different things. The horror fan is not going to see the Lego movie. I mean, they might see the Lego movie, but it is a little bit of counter programming, if you will, as far as the release date. I will say on Valentine's Day, that is kind of a strange day to release a horror movie, but we'll see. The first one, I'm not really sure how well it did on reviews. I think, most horror movies tend to not get very good reviews as a whole. It won't get me in the theater that day, but I at least think it's interesting. But then again, I like the genre more than you. Something we touched upon when we were talking beforehand was about how many sequels and how many reboots and how many remakes there are. So just already in talking about Glass was a sequel, a third part. Lego Movie's a sequel. This Happy Death Day is a sequel. How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World. That's another follow-up. That's a third film of a trilogy. That releases on February 22nd. So this is really kind of dominating the early, at least the month of February. It seems to be pretty much sequels other than the Alita Battle Angel movie. Did you see the first two, How to Train Your Dragon?
I did.
You did. Did you enjoy them?
I did.
Well, you saw them both.
I saw them both. I went. The first one was so good, I saw the second one, and I'm sure I will see this one again. It's not something I'll go to the movie theater to see, but as soon as it's streaming, I'll definitely watch it. It's very well done. It's funny. I enjoyed it. I do enjoy a lot of these animated movies
because you know what? They're not just made for kids.
They're not.
Animation has definitely changed over the years to where animated films are taken seriously and done seriously for both adults and children. The best ones are. And we'll get to a couple of those, more of those as we go on. I'm kind of with you. I don't think I'll see this one in the theater. I think when it hits a streaming service, I'll just say ditto to everything you said. Enjoyed the first two, and this is another film that I will definitely want to see. But again, I'll wait till it actually shows up in my my Netflix queue is where I'm guessing. So that gets us through February. Let's move into March. We have on March 1st, Chaos Walking is your big release. This is a novel adaptation of a young adult novel. And this one, the catchphrase, as I saw on the Rotten Tomatoes list, was, hey, it's the movie with Rey from Star Wars and Spider-Man, as Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley are your two main stars in this particular movie. The synopsis I'm reading here, because it's not a property I'm familiar with, it's a sci-fi novel about a young man living in a colony on another planet who believes that all women have been killed by a virus until he meets a mysterious girl who may hold the key to the planet's secrets. That's your basic synopsis. And I'm guessing you haven't read the novel that it's based on.
I have not.
Okay, so that's two of us. Me telling you that it stars those two and that's the premise. Any interest there? What do you think?
None.
None.
What I find strange is it's directed by Doug Liman. And for those of you who don't know, he's a guy who has directed such things as Swingers, The Bourne Identity, and Edge of Tomorrow.
This is a science fiction book or a novel. So, I mean, Swingers doesn't really seem to fit in with that. What were the other ones? Because you threw out, there was one there you threw out. I was like, well, but that would fit with this.
It was Swingers, The Bourne Identity, Edge of Tomorrow. He directed American Made.
Edge of Tomorrow seems like if you directed that and you like that this could maybe fall in with that type of feel, maybe.
I'm looking at his IMDb page, by the way, and I just groaned because I noticed that he is listed as a director on a movie that has been announced. Apparently, they're remaking the Cannonball Run, and he's going to be the director. Oh. And don't even get me started on the whole remakes and reboots.
We're going to be talking about that, definitely, because those will be coming up as we continue to go through the movie schedule for the year, because there's a lot of remakes and a lot of reboots of properties I'm sure people didn't realize were getting remade, but yes, they are. Continuing through March, on March 8th, we have Captain Marvel. And this is a biggie. This is Marvel's next big tentpole movie. It will be the lead into the Avengers, starring Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson, a digitally younger Samuel L. Jackson, judging by the trailers. This will be a big deal. And again, Marvel has just not missed yet. No movie they've made has failed to hit, has failed to connect with audiences. And they have made what I would say, again, as a comic book fan, they have made B-list and C-list characters. You know, in comic book lore, the Guardians of the Galaxy were a C-list or even a D-list property. Even Iron Man was not an A-list. Marvel's big properties were always Spider-Man and then the X-Men. Those were the two big properties which they didn't have the rights to. But they made their other characters, not that the other characters were less important in comic book lore, they just didn't sell as well, and turned them into billion-dollar movie properties. Captain Marvel's another one, and for anyone who doesn't know the comic lore, the original Captain Marvel, I believe, will appear in this, but the female Captain Marvel went through a lot of previous incarnations. She was a character called Ms. Marvel in the 70s. That's very 70s, isn't it? Ms. Marvel. She was the feminist superhero. She was the, women's lib sort of fighting for women's rights champion type, because it was a sign of the times. Marvel did a lot of those type of titles in the 70s. They had Luke Cage, who, if anyone who's seen his series on Netflix, sort of taking advantage of the blaxploitation movie genre of the 70s. Iron Fist, which was also part of the Netflix series that ran, that was taking advantage of the kung fu craze, right, in the karate phase of the 70s. Ms. Marvel was kind of let's have a female superhero. We really don't have a lot of those. And she eventually transitioned into the new Captain Marvel in the comic books, and that's the person we're going to see in this movie. This is going to be a big test. It's the first movie Marvel has done featuring a female character as its lead. A lot of people would say it's overdue. A lot of people who followed the Marvel movies want to know why Black Widow and Scarlett Johansson didn't get a movie sooner than this. That seemed to be overdue. I don't know how much the success of Wonder Woman, released by Warner Brothers and DC, which was very successful and very critically acclaimed, how much that had to do with Marvel saying, you know what, we can make this work with a female lead character. I don't see there's any reason why it can't. I mean, we've seen action movies with strong female characters succeed very well in the past, as anyone who watched and was a fan of the Alien franchise or the Terminator franchise would tell you. I'm looking forward to it because I've loved all the Marvel movies, and I want to see where we go from here. This one's probably going to be a tier 1 for me. I'm probably going to see this one in the theater. How about you? What's your feelings on this one?
I don't know much about the history of this property. You're more the comic guy than I am, but like you said, these Marvel movies are great. Every single one of them has been fantastic. So I'm definitely going to go see this. And this is something I probably would see in the movie theater. So this would be a 1.
It's going to be a movie that I don't want to say it's a risk for Marvel because, like I said, there haven't been any risks. They've taken bigger risks than this. Again, I'm not seeing a budget for what Captain Marvel's running. And that's always going to be the key is how much they're spent and how much they're going to need to recoup on this. Another one that's showing a runtime of a little bit over 2 hours. There's going to be a lot of story. There may be something that will end up tying it into the Avengers sequel that's coming up later in the month, and which will be the last movie we talk about. Yeah. I mean, I hope it does well just because as a fan of the Marvel Universe, if any movie fails, somebody's going to come out of the woodwork and say, yep, it's superhero fatigue and no one wants to see these movies. And as someone who enjoys them, I absolutely want to continue to see them made. So I'm rooting for it to succeed. And yeah, we'll both be in the theaters, it sounds like, to see that.
Yep.
The rest of the month, there's a couple other movies that, I see the big one. I see the live action adaptation of Dumbo. Did you see any of these other movies where it looks like there's a Tom Hanks movie called Greyhound, another World War II movie? Again, good cast, him and Elizabeth Shue, where he's commanding the naval ship Greyhound, which was pursued by German U-boats across the Atlantic Ocean. The director won an Oscar for Best Live Action Short back in 2003 in Aaron Schneider. Tom Hanks in World War II movies, he seems to do well with historical type of pieces. I love Tom Hanks. I love everything he does. Jordan Peele has a new movie coming out. He did Get Out in 2017, which was a huge success and a very, very good movie. It's a movie called
Did you see that?
Us. Did I see Get Out? Yes, I did. It wasn't what I would have expected from Jordan Peele because what I knew of Jordan Peele was from his comedy. And that was not, I didn't know he had that in him. So it was a pleasant surprise on that front as well. But again, Get Out was kind of a horror movie, but it crosses like a suspense, a thriller, horror. It kind of has elements of all of that. And I thought it was a really good movie. And I thought it deserved to be a good hit. And I'm glad it did well. So, though whether or not that will get me to go see this movie, I don't see a lot of information other than it's got good people attached to it, but I don't really see much in the line of a synopsis for that particular movie. So I guess we'll have to.
I saw the trailer. The trailer was really intense. I did not see Get Out. My wife did. She thought it was phenomenal. The trailer for Us definitely caught my attention. And Get Out was a huge hit. It was a huge smash and got great reviews, did very well at the box office. I have a feeling this might be more of the same.
Well, on the bright side for it, it releases on the 22nd. That's 2 weeks after Captain Marvel. And that goes back to the way the studios kind of slot these movies. That seems to be recognition by other studios that we do not want to go up against that Captain Marvel movie. We want to get out of its way. We want to let it try to clear out some of that audience so we have a chance to get people in. Because if we go straight up head to head against it, no one's going to come see it, and we're going to be a bomb right out the gate. Like I said, it releases on the 22nd. Greyhound releases on the 22nd. Again, I don't know if either one of these will be theater movies for me, but they certainly would be ones that when they show up on a streaming service, I'll probably check out. The Where'd You Go, Bernadette is also releasing on that day. That's based on a novel. It's a dramedy. It's about a mother who goes missing and her teenage daughter has to figure out what happens. It's got, again, another Oscar-winning director attached to it. Some very big names: Cate Blanchett, Billy Crudup, Kristen Wiig, Judy Greer, Lawrence Fishburne. That's a heck of a cast right off the bat. do people go to movies though anymore simply based on I like that actor, I'll go see whatever they're in, or that has a strong cast, or do you really need a strong hook? What do you think brings people into the theater when it comes to, like, when you're looking at a movie? Is it the trailer? Is it the cast? Is it the story? What's your main hook?
The reviews.
Is it the reviews?
For me, it is. Yeah.
I don't use reviews as the main thing. If I'm not sure, I'll check reviews, and sometimes it might swing me one way or the other. Like I said, I don't always trust a movie review.
I've seen plenty of good trailers. Then I read the reviews, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to see that. A perfect example of that is Welcome to Marwen, which was a phenomenal trailer. It was amazing. But everything I read about the movie was, if you saw the trailer, you don't need to see the movie.
Well, there are some movies where all the good bits get put in the trailer, and then nothing, and then you're like, "Yep, this is everything I saw in the trailer, and there's nothing else to this movie." You're absolutely correct on that.
So if I went by, is it an actor I like? Yes, Steve Carell is in it. I usually like things that he's in. The trailer was phenomenal. But if I didn't read the reviews about it, I would have gone to the movie and been tremendously disappointed, obviously. So now I'm not going to that movie. I mean, I may eventually watch it because I'm interested in checking. Sometimes you need to watch a bad movie, even though you know it's bad, to kind of adjust your compass, so to speak, to know whether you agree with the reviews that you read, whether, yep, that review is right on. That was exactly what the problem with that movie was. So I don't not watch a movie because it's got a bad review, but I definitely won't go to a movie if it has a bad review.
Gotcha. That will lead us to the last big movie of the month of March. That is the live action adaptation of Dumbo. And there are many surprising things about this movie. The main thing is going to be the director, but it's again, a very big name cast. Colin Farrell, Eva Green, Michael Keaton, Danny DeVito is in this movie. I saw the trailer for it. It looked really good. And I will tell you, when I saw the trailer, you mentioned Dumbo was the first really big Disney cartoon thing you ever saw, correct? As a child?
I think it was the first movie I ever went to. I'm almost 100% sure that my aunt took me to go see that movie.
I was never a big Dumbo fan as a kid, but I'm going to tell you, I saw the trailer and I was like, I think I might want to see this in the movie theater. I was definitely intrigued. The bizarre thing for me is the director. Did you see who's directing it?
I did.
Tim Burton.
That makes me want to see it more.
And I tell you what, I love Tim Burton's work. There's very little Tim Burton even his bad movies have a flair and a style. And when I say bad movies, like badly reviewed movies, his Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was not particularly well received, but it was so visually interesting and it's so bizarre in its own way. Alice in Wonderland he did, correct? And that wasn't particularly well reviewed. But again, he has such a unique vision, and his movies, when you're watching a Tim Burton movie. And I just couldn't picture him doing Dumbo. There's just something about that seems so, really? He's doing Dumbo? That just doesn't seem right. But like I said, I saw the trailer and I was immediately interested, and I was like, this looks good. And it's Disney, and everything Disney does goes to gold. You mentioned they did the Jungle Book live action, correct? That ended up doing very well. And my guess is this movie is going to do very, very well at the box office. You're going to see kids going to it. You're going to see adults going to it. And I hope it's as good as the trailer led me to believe it might be. I have faith. Tim Burton, like I said, even when his movies aren't great, they're still fun to watch in their own way. So that's a 1 for me. That's probably in the theater for me. Would you say the same?
I'm not sure if it's a 1 or a 2, but it's definitely something I'm going to see.
It's on your radar. It's not a 5.
It's not a 5. It's not a 5. And you had mentioned that we've seen the live action adaptations. This might be a little bit of the year of the live action adaptation, because you have Dumbo, you have Aladdin, and you have The Lion King, which isn't really live action, but it's more CGI, but it's remakes of old Disney movies. And I think after the huge success of The Jungle Book, that Disney is not one to look away from potential profits. So
And Beauty and the Beast was another one they did with Emma Watson, was another live action adaptation of a very successful animated. So we're going to move into April, and I think we're going to save one of the April movies to last because that's Avengers. I think that could be the last one we can end this on. So we'll kind of skip over that one. It's going to be the dominant movie of the summer, almost certainly. There are other movies opening in April. There are other comic book movies opening in April. And I'm going to we'll talk about those two first together, even though they're not releasing on the same day. On April 5th, we'll have Shazam, which is DC's version of Captain Marvel, except they can't use the Captain Marvel name because Marvel owns the trademark to it. So they have to call him Shazam. This is based, like I said, off of DC's Captain Marvel, which was always a humorous comic book or had levels of humor in it. And I've seen the trailer for Shazam, and it looks like it is going to be a movie that has a lot of comedic elements to it. I don't really know. And again, I'm a huge comic book fan. I'm not feeling this one. I just am not looking forward to it. I just don't think it looks like a movie that's going to translate well. I think it's going to be a DC flop. They did have Aquaman did really well. Wonder Woman did really well. I don't think this is going to be anywhere near that level, unfortunately. And the characters, for anyone who doesn't know, Shazam it's a 14-year-old, essentially an orphan, who finds himself in a subway train, and he ends up in the care of an old wizard named Shazam, who gives him the power when he says his name to become a superhero, Captain Marvel. And it's an adult superhero, but with the mind and body still of a teenager or a boy. How that works, I don't know. But I will say, again, just in the strange connection sort of thing, the director of this movie is David Sandberg. And I don't know if you know what he's done. He has two movies that did pretty well. Lights Out and Annabelle Creation, two horror films. Is that who you want directing your lighthearted comedic superhero movie? I don't know if that's a good fit. That seems now James Wan is the one, didn't he? He did Aquaman, correct? He was your Aquaman director. He also directed The Conjuring, which was a very, very scary and very good horror film. So I'm not saying you can't make that transition. When I just saw that, that was very, very weird to me. The other superhero movie is Hellboy, which is not a sequel. It's another reboot of the Hellboy character, which was played by, I believe it was Ron Perlman who played him very well. The first two Hellboy movies were very entertaining. Perlman wanted to make another Hellboy, but they just never did. But now all of a sudden they're making this one, but it's a reboot. And I'm not sure who was asking them to reboot it. I think people would have been happy seeing a follow-up to the first two. I just don't know what to feel about that. It's being directed by a gentleman by the name of Neil Marshall, and he did a movie called The Descent, which, again, since you're not a horror fan, one of the best horror movies made in the last 20 years. It's a phenomenal movie. But again, a superhero movie it may be. I'm a superhero fan. I'm not seeing either one of these in the theater. I'm not even sure I'm seeing either one of these on Netflix or wherever it should show up. These are probably like tier 3 for me. They're just going to have to be on, and I'm just going to have some dead time. And my guess is you're not as big a superhero fan as me. My guess is you're not going to the theater for either one of these either, if I'm guessing correctly.
Shazam, maybe, depending on what the reviews look like. I'll keep an open mind because some DC stuff has been really good recently, right? So yes. I'm going to keep an open mind about that. When it comes to Hellboy, I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. I have a question, and it's something that my wife and I talk about all the time.
Okay.
Sometimes I get the feeling that there are no new, fresh ideas in Hollywood, whether it comes to TV shows being rebooted, whether it is movies being rebooted. Why do we need to remake the same thing that was good the first time? If I want to see Hellboy, I'll watch the original. I don't need to see a new version of it. What are you going to add to it that makes me need to see it? So this year, this goes beyond the 6-month period. we have remakes and reboots. Now, some of them are live action adaptations. We mentioned Dumbo. We'll be mentioning Aladdin, The Lion King, etc.
And that's not really the same thing because that's a new thing altogether.
Correct. All right. This year we have Hellboy, we have Shaft, we have Men in Black, we have Child's Play, we have Addams Family, and we have Charlie's Angels. These are not sequels. They're not like the next chapter in the movie. They are reboots. Why do we need to do this? We've already seen the movie. I don't need to see it again. The Charlie's Angels movie wasn't good. It wasn't good to begin with. Why do we need to try to remake it again? I guarantee this new Charlie's Angels, it might be worse than the original. Why do we need to do it?
A reboot of an adaptation of a 70s TV show. That you basically summed it up right there. Not every reboot or remake is terrible. To go back to something, and again, these are horror related, so they may not be your cup of tea, but you may or may not have seen these movies. In the 80s, they made The Fly with Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis, which was an amazing movie, which was essentially a remake of the old Vincent Price. I think Vincent Price was in the 50s or early 60s, the black and white Fly. And it was a completely different tone and different story and was much superior to the original. The Thing by John Carpenter, which was in the early 80s, is based off of The Thing from Another World, I believe it is, science fiction film, again, a black and white film. The remake or this new adaptation, far superior. Of course, they made another The Thing movie, which is essentially was a prequel, which was nowhere near as good as the original. Are they running out of ideas? There's an old saying that there's only so many stories you can tell overall, and that how many different tales are there? There's just different spins on certain story bases, right? You have a romantic story, you have a heroic story, you have a thriller, you have whatever it is. You only have so many, and the only thing you can do is change characters or change settings. But you're right; it just seems like more and more reboots, more and more sequels, less and less original ideas. But then again, when the originals sell, I think that's what it boils down to. We're talking about bottom dollar, and people look for properties that have name recognition, that have been successful. And currently, we mentioned on a previous podcast how many movies in the top 10 or top 11 from 2018 were comic book movies. That may be a reason we're seeing a Hellboy reboot. Though, again, I would have just been as happy to see Perlman back in the role and continuing it on for wherever they left off, even if they didn't reference the first two. But yeah, why do we need a complete retelling from the beginning? It just doesn't make any sense.
I would understand it more if it was an older movie, like, if it was a movie from the 50s. All right, well, we can retell it. Maybe the original was in black and white. We want to do it in color. Then I feel like there's something added. There's value added to it. But the original Hellboy was recent enough that I remember it, right? I remember it well. I don't need to see a new version of it. There was nothing wrong with the original. Why can't we just let it be? And it just, anyway. So for me, any of these remakes, any of them, there is not a single one on here that I will watch, that I'm interested in. Pet Sematary is another one, another remake.
I was going to mention that next. Releasing in the middle of those two is Pet Sematary, and that's another movie that the original. I've read a lot of Stephen King works, and it was such a big success last year that I guess now it's like, well, what else did Stephen King do that we can work on and maybe make a movie off of? The original Pet Sematary was not a bad movie. It wasn't a bad adaptation of the Stephen King book, but it wasn't a classic by any stretch. It was nowhere near as good as Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of The Shining, even though King hated that. And this movie, yeah, why do you need to remake it? And by the way, there was a sequel to Pet Sematary called Pet Sematary 2, which was, I think, direct to video and absolutely awful. And I'm sorry to say I wasted whatever time of my life when I watched it the one time I saw it. I like Stephen King. I like horror movies. I have no interest in seeing this whatsoever. This is the paint dry one. This is the 4. Because why? Like you said, why is this being made other than to maybe cash in? My guess is it's not going to do very well at the box office because I don't think, like you said, no one's clamoring for it. This is coming out. This and Hellboy are coming out, or Shazam are coming out a week after Dumbo. And then Hellboy comes out the week after that. I would not be stunned if Dumbo just basically holds the #1 box office slot for all 3 of those weeks, and that all 3 of those movies just get buried under the weight of the elephant, basically. Baby elephant as it may be, it's still going to be heavy, and it's going to be pushing its weight around. I don't see any of those movies doing very good. The rest of the month of April has a handful of different movies, nothing that really jumps out at me.
Yeah, nothing worth even talking about.
Other than that Avengers movie, but we're going to save that for when we finish. Because like I said, I think that's the big movie of the summer. So let's skip ahead to May, and then we'll come back to Avengers. There's a movie called Ugly Dolls. May 3rd it releases. And that's basically based on a popular line of plush toys. It's an animated musical film. It stars Kelly Clarkson. It's going to have music. It's going to be very colorful. I'm just going to repeat, it's based on a line of plush toys. Hey, you were talking about bankrupt ideas. What are we coming to? Plush toys? Really? Is that where we're getting our ideas from these days? I mean, it was board games when they were making things like Battleship, right? Is it plush toys?
The problem with Ugly Dolls is it's going to be going up against our next movie here, which is Pokemon Detective Pikachu.
Yeah. Ryan Reynolds is in this movie. Ryan, I saw a preview for it. I saw a trailer. Ryan Reynolds is Pikachu. And apparently he doesn't just say his name over and over again like he does in the cartoon. So Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise ever. Were you aware of that? It is the highest grossing franchise of all time. Of all time. That's crazy. And that's across the board. It has earned, since its inception, $59.1 billion United States dollars since it was created.
Is that billion with a B?
Billion with a B. That is a behemoth with a B. That's everything. That's your toys, it's your cartoons, that's your I believe your video games, that's everything. So you know what? That's a huge franchise, and it's still popular. There are still plenty of kids who know Pokemon. I was talking with a lady the other day whose kids play Pokemon. So Pokemon cards are still a thing. And I remember those being new like 20 years ago. And I was surprised. I'm like, really? They still make those? Apparently they do. Apparently it's still popular. You know what? They did Pokemon movies before, but never really big ones. This one, again, a live action animation hybrid. I don't know if it's going to be any good. It actually might be terrible. It sounds like a movie that could be terrible, even with Ryan Reynolds in it. But I imagine it's going to do pretty well. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think, it's Ugly Dolls will be releasing the week before, but that's going to be buried by the Avengers, I'm sure. And Pokemon may be buried still by the Avengers at that point. We'll have to see, because I note the studios really didn't have a lot of big stuff coming out after Avengers. One of the ones that's coming out May 17th, we have John Wick Chapter 3. The John Wick movies. Again, this is one I'm a little surprised. Not that I did or did not like the John Wick movies. I'm surprised we're in a Chapter 3 of John Wick. Everything gets a franchise these days, apparently, right? Is that how this works?
I enjoyed the first 2, so I'm kind of looking forward to the third one. Not something I necessarily would go to the movie theater for, but it would rank a 2 for me. I'll definitely see it.
I think I'm probably like you. I'd put it in like a tier 2. Halle Berry is also in this one. Ian McShane, Lawrence Fishburne, Angelica Houston. Again, really big name cast for this movie. It's probably a 2 for me. On the bright side, for Keanu Reeves, I pretty much see his performance in every movie I watch. So I kind of know what he brings to the table at this point. He's good at his character, right? He's good at being Keanu Reeves, I think, in films. And when he can do that, it's a good movie. So I did not see the second John Wick. I saw the first, and it was a movie I liked. I wasn't thrilled to death to go running out of the streets telling people about it, but it wasn't one that made me hate the fact I owned a television and that I had electricity. So, I'm like you. I think when it reaches a streaming service, I'll watch it. Rocket Man is being remade. So that is not a remake.
No,
that's not a remake.
Not a remake.
It sounds like it should be, right? But it's not. That's the biography of Elton John is this particular film. it seems like, again, that's a movie. I don't know how well it'll do in a theater. I think it may have a very limited audience. Doesn't scream out blockbuster to me, but I liked Elton John, it's not dead. I don't want to make it sound like it's past tense. I like Elton John. I listened to his music before. I think he's very talented. I don't know if I want to see a biography of him. That seems to me to be one of those, if it's on type of thing, like a tier 4. But
I think we've seen a lot of these biopics come out for different bands.
Bohemian Rhapsody
last year, which was excellent. I mean, it was the movie wasn't great, but the performances were phenomenal. Especially Rami Malek, who played Freddie Mercury in the movie. He was phenomenal. And they did a really good job with the music scenes to the point where the final scene is the scene from Live Aid. And if you actually go back on YouTube and watch the Live Aid scene, it's amazing how close they were to nailing it like perfectly. So there's Bohemian Rhapsody was very good. It was very well done. It was entertaining. It was fun. It was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I didn't feel like it was a waste of my time. And I'm hoping that the Rocket Man movie will do the same for Elton John, that it'll be an interesting movie, tell a little bit about the story. So for me, it's somewhere between a 1 and a 2. It may be something that me and my wife go and see. We kind of like big music fans, so we'll go and see something like that.
All right. Last 2 movies we'll talk about for this month, and then I think we can we'll finish up with May, and then we'll just go back and talk about Avengers and save the rest of the year for a second podcast. The last 2 big movies coming out in May. We have the live action adaptation of Aladdin, and I saw a very, very brief trailer, which really told me nothing, didn't really get me excited about it. Again, it's got a big names at the top of the cast. That's Will Smith as the genie, I believe. Guy Ritchie directed it. Again, everything Disney does just turns to gold. My guess is we're going to see this movie make a lot of money. I don't know if I'll see it.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
Guy Ritchie?
Yeah, well,
this is not in Guy Ritchie's wheelhouse.
It's not. I said we have some directors here in some of these. As they said, it's his family entertainment debut. I mean, it's not really his thing.
Guy Ritchie is kind of a one-trick pony. Whether it's the Sherlock Holmes movies or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Guns, and
he's not your choice for Aladdin, right?
No. It's a really weird pairing. I mean, I may be interested to watch it just for that, because I don't know of anything that Guy Ritchie has ever done that's even close to this type of thing. I mean, he's really kind of got a niche.
I trust Disney to know what they're doing, but I see your point, and it might be one of those. Who knows? It could be a train wreck. The trailer I saw again was so brief that it really told me nothing about whether or not I thought I would enjoy this film. I wasn't really the biggest fan of the original Aladdin, the animated one. It's not one of my favorite. I've seen most, if not all, the Disney animated stuff. The first Aladdin is not high up on my list, and it's for no particular reason. I just didn't appeal to me as much as other animated films they've done, like The Lion King, which is something we'll talk about on a later podcast. Yeah, I'm with you. That seems kind of strange. I'm not sure what they're going with there, but we'll find out. There'll be more trailers as we get closer. I mean, that releases at the end of May, so we're still a ways away from it. That's May 24th. Releasing on May 31st will be Godzilla King of the Monsters. So that'll be the sequel to the Godzilla movie that we saw a couple years ago. And this is, not surprisingly, Godzilla and Other Monsters. Rodan, Mothra, King Ghidorah. I don't know how big of a Godzilla fan you are, or historian of Godzilla. Not sure that you are a Godzilla historian.
It's not on my resume.
It's not on your resume. The one thing about Godzilla, for anyone who doesn't know much about the Godzilla franchise, is that Godzilla was the very first movie was very dark. And it was very serious. It was in black and white. And anyone who hasn't seen it, I recommend seeing it. It's basically a metaphor for nuclear war. And remember, made by Japanese filmmakers. And they kind of had experience with what detonation of a nuclear bomb did to a city, right? And Godzilla was kind of the metaphor for that as he wrecked Tokyo and wrecked Japan. And it was a very dark and gritty, and it wasn't a horror movie per se, but it was very dark element tones to it. And then the movies got silly. And then as they continued to pump out Godzilla sequels in Japan throughout the 60s and 70s, the movies got sillier and sillier and goofier and geared towards kids. And Godzilla was very much a cartoonish creature and a good guy, if a giant rampaging monster can be such. The remake of Godzilla obviously kind of changed that. I'm not sure what this means with other monsters and other fighting. The only thing I can figure out is there's going to be a lot of stuff destroyed, a lot of property destruction, right?
I saw the trailer for it. It was in one of the movies I just went and saw recently.
Okay, I have not seen it.
To say that there was a lot of destruction is an understatement. It's like everything gets destroyed. The whole trailer was nothing but mass destruction for 2 minutes.
2 minutes of mass destruction. Again, I like Godzilla, and I like the fact it's a serious take on it. But I don't know if I'll see this in the theater. I may be a little bit movie fatigued at that point, depending what I've seen and what's upcoming and what my schedule will allow. I'm guessing it'll do. I mean, the first one did well at the box office. I'm guessing this one will do well. This is probably going to be a 2 for me. It's going to be, when it hits streaming, I'll catch it there. But I don't see myself catching it in the theater. So, but then again, the lure of watching like tons of buildings get destroyed, that's tempting. I may have to go search that trailer out now and see if that changes my rating on that. Because that's mindless entertainment at that point, isn't it? I'm not really sure how much of a plot you can have in a Godzilla movie other than we have people, now we have monsters, now we need to run, now we need to figure out how to stop this. I mean, that's pretty much the plot for that, isn't it? It's not rocket science, right? So last movie we'll talk about for the first half of the year. It's the big elephant in the room is not Dumbo. It's Avengers Endgame. That's going to be opening on April 26th. And that is the big blow off to the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe's time up to this point. They call it Phase 3. This ends Phase 3. Everything that started when Iron Man first came out. And we are 10 years since Iron Man came out. It has been a lengthy time that some of these people have been playing these characters in lots of movies. And when it first started, who would have guessed? Yeah, it was 2008 when Iron Man was released. So we are in May will be 11 years since Iron Man first came out. When the end credit sequence came out and they teased the Avengers, and I remember the theater I was in erupting because they knew, the comic fans who hung around knew what that meant. That was a very exciting moment. To see it all come to fruition as a comic book fan for me has been absolutely astounding. As I've told fellow comic book fans, I never could have foreseen a day where comic book movies would be at this scale, at this level, taken this seriously. And to see Avengers Endgame coming up, I am so stoked for this. I'm of mixed emotions because I know there's going to be some final resolutions for certain characters, and there's lots of speculation at this point who's not going to make it out because Marvel is going to kind of shift its focus in Phase 4 to other projects. And there are things I know from a comic book standpoint that will be, I guess, news to you at this point. So I'll let you talk about it first. You just saw Avengers Infinity War. And so now you have a little bit fresher perspective on that movie than I do, since I saw that a little while longer. I'm guessing this is an in the theater for you, definitely, movie.
Yes. I'm just confused as to how this is a good business decision to kill off half of your superheroes at the end of a movie.
Well, half the whole universe went. So it wasn't just the superheroes.
But you're not making a movie about the universe. You're making a movie about the superheroes. So half the superheroes are dead. So Spider-Man's dead, and a lot of the Guardians of the Galaxy guys are dead, and
they'll be back.
See, now you lost me. See, now I'm wondering if Bill Maher is right. They all died. How are they coming back? I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. No, it was really well done. I always like how they're able to take all these characters from all these different properties and merge them together and make it work. So yeah, it was a great movie. And obviously it makes me want to see the next one, see how this whole thing develops. Now, obviously I know that some of these characters have to come back because I know there's another Black Panther movie coming out. I know there's another Spider-Man movie coming out. So obviously they have to come back to life. It'll be interesting to see how that whole story works. I mean, you may know more than I do just because you know the comics. I'm not a comic book guy. I'm not reading. I don't follow the stories in the books, but I do enjoy the movies.
The nerd hat I'll put on for a second. I will say the Russo brothers have been amazing in being able to tell the stories that they've done throughout the Marvel universe with the movies they've made. And the last Avengers movie, you're right, so many characters, and yet they all had moments in the film that focused on them and brought them into the spotlight, and no one felt shortchanged. I loved the ending. It was one of those things that Marvel pulled off because they can do it, because their movies have been so successful, and because it worked. The bad guy won. He succeeded. He did what he set out to do.
Right. It ended with him doing exactly what he said he was going to do once he got all the stones, right?
I think I mentioned it before. The teasers usually have at the end, so-and-so will return. And I noticed it was Thanos will return, not the Avengers, not specific characters. Thanos will return. And the story was actually as much about Thanos as a character as it was any of the Avengers and his quest and his character arc. And Josh Brolin did a great job portraying him. And it was, I think I made the comparison that it's a very much an Empire Strikes Back type of feel, except it was bleaker because Empire had that little bit of hope at the end. But if you think about it, Empire Strikes Back was a much darker tone movie, and the bad guy wins. Han Solo's captured. Luke gets his hand chopped off. He finds out Vader is his father. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen that movie in over 30, 40 years, whatever it's been. But it had a very dark tone. At least had a little bit of hope at the end. That's not the case in Avengers Infinity War. Everybody is beaten and the bad guy is triumphant. And it works. The story works. It absolutely did. And it made you, like you said, it makes you want to see the next one. And this is the big blow off. And as far as how people come back, I can tell you from comic book, they've deviated from the comic book storylines and that there's a character, and it kind of disappointed me as a comic book fan. There's a character called Adam Warlock, who was kind of Thanos's main foil as a good guy in the comic book storylines and was a major part of the Infinity Crusade, which is the storyline that this is mainly based off of. And they've never introduced him in the Marvel movie universe until the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 at the very end in the end credit sequence, where the female character, her, has mentioned that they have a new creation and it's him. And she says, I'm going to call him Adam. And that's the cocoon and everything clearly indicates that's going to be Adam Warlock. And Kevin Feige has said that they will introduce him, but it's mainly going to be probably in the Guardians 3, which will be after this. So they've eliminated him. He was a main point of how Thanos was defeated in the comic books, which means the movies are going in a completely different direction. I've seen speculation that Iron Man will be the one who dies and sacrifices himself in some way. And if you remember in Infinity War, Doctor Strange kept saying that there was only one possibility where the Avengers could win, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And yet he let Thanos have the gauntlet. And I can tell you the character of Thanos in the comic books is a complex character in that he seeks ultimate power, but does something involuntarily, subconsciously, to cause him to lose a fight he shouldn't lose because deep down he feels he's not worthy of said power. I don't know if that will be brought into this equation at all. There's been speculation that there's going to be a bigger villain than even Thanos in this, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be something to do with the gems. Ant-Man, who was not in the Avengers Infinity War, is going to be in here. He's been shown to travel the quantum realms throughout his movies. There's going to be some form of time travel involved. Supposed stills from the movie's shooting show scenes that look like it's with new characters, but with characters in old outfits that suggest that they're showing scenes from previous movies, like the Battle of New York from the first Avengers movie, but sort of where they're going back in time and maybe pulling characters out of time loops. Time travel is definitely going to be a part of it. Hopefully it won't be too confusing. We know how movies with time travel can get. Hawkeye is going to be back, not quite as Hawkeye, but as a character in the comics that is known as Ronin. That's what he looks like. And Captain Marvel is going to play a key part in this movie from what we're being told. The contracts of Robert Downey and Chris Evans are up after this movie. From what I've heard, Chris Evans has kind of said his goodbyes and said, it's been wonderful working on these movies. And then he kind of backed it up a little bit because people are like, wait, does that mean you're completely done? Does that mean you're dying? And he's like, no, I'm just saying it was great working and it's the end of the thing. But the feeling is I think he's done with the character. And I think Downey is done with Iron Man at this point. And the question is, are they both going to make it out alive? Are they both going to die? What's going to happen? Are they going to have a new Captain America? Will that be the character of Bucky, the Winter Soldier, taking over the mantle? Could we have a new Iron Man at some point? I don't know. There's so much that the Marvel Universe can still do. Disney acquired Fox recently, right? That's literally going through the final stages of completion for that deal, correct? In doing so, they acquired the rights to two big properties in the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. So there are plenty of opportunities to work those characters into Marvel movies in the future. So Marvel's got a lot going for it and can still do a lot. And our last podcast, we talked about Bill Maher hating comic books and comic book movies. Well, he's going to have to put up with a lot more because this should be the biggest grossing movie of the year. It absolutely should end up grossing. Avengers Infinity War grossed a grand total of almost 700 million domestically, and it grossed over 2 billion worldwide. My guess is that domestic gross is going to be just as high, if not higher. That worldwide gross, because the foreign markets continue to grow. Worldwide, I think it's going to break 2 billion again. This is basically just a cash cow for Disney, but on the bright side, it's a cash cow that's actually making good movies. It's not just we're pumping out garbage and making money. These have been good tales, compelling tales, and we are invested in these characters at this point. You've seen pretty much all the Marvel movies, most if not all, correct? If Iron Man dies in this movie, that's going to resonate, right? You have a connection to that character now over 11 years of seeing Tony Stark / Iron Man throughout a bunch of different movies. If Captain America dies, that's going to resonate. These people we've watched evolve in this cinematic universe, which had never been done before. There's never been, we've seen franchises, we've seen movies with sequels and with continuity. What Marvel did was unprecedented and was unbelievable because it was so ambitious of a project and they've made it work. And I'm just so stoked to see this. This will be one of those, they'll probably have a midnight screening of it, obviously, or 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whenever they'll start screening. I'm going to be in line. I'm going to see that on my first immediate opportunity. And it's probably a movie, if it's good, if it's as good as I think it'll be, I'll see more than once. So, and you mentioned like characters coming back and all. You saw Infinity War. How heartbreaking was it to watch Spider-Man dissipating in Tony Stark's arms at that point? I was in the theater when that happened, and I remember like people gasping, people like and it really hit home, and it's amazing. And there's a character that has not been in the Marvel universe for all that long, but Marvel does such a good job in telling the stories because it's not just guys in tights, it's not just guys with powers. It's what Marvel's all about. It's characters with flaws, real people you can relate to, even with these other things. And the stories, we've gotten to know them so well. They're so much a part of our culture now. And this is the blow off. This is, they called it Endgame. This really is the end game for, I love the fact that the Rotten Tomatoes thing says it's starring everybody. That's what they literally put for the cast. Everybody. It's going to be a big cast, and it'll be interesting to see how it ends up working out. And I'm stoked. I can't put it higher than a 1. If I could, I would, because, if I had a way to see it now, I would. No runtime yet. That's my guess is that's going to be well over 2 hours, because it's going to take a while to wrap everything up. But yeah, if you can't tell, I'm stoked. That's my big one for the entire year. If I was only able to see one movie all year, that would be the one I would say. So I don't know if that's the same thing with you, if that would be your one and only, but my guess is it's going to be a lot of people's one movie that they're going to have to see.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be, I'm looking forward to it. I'm putting it on the calendar. I'm sure if we don't see it first night, we'll see it the first weekend. Like you said, I'm looking at the full cast and crew, and it's like people that I didn't even know were part of, like Jon Favreau's in it.
He played Happy Hogan, which was Iron Man's bodyguard assistant in the Iron Man movies. And he actually directed the very first Iron Man movie. So yeah, he would be in it. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a monster cast, because you have, like you said, you have all these franchises all coming together in the Avengers, and then since the very first Avengers movie, you had other franchises that started up, like Guardians of the Galaxy. So you have those characters worked in, and they added Spider-Man in. Yeah, I mean, the cast is just mammoth. You talk about the budget. I mean, you think about what Downey's making. Chris Evans is not coming cheaply anymore. Hemsworth isn't coming cheaply. No,
Scarlett Johansson, Bradley Cooper,
Samuel L. Jackson. I'm assuming is going to be in this again, because even though he got wiped He's not away.
Listed. You know who else isn't listed?
Who else is
the Star-Lord?
Did he get wiped away?
He died. He died in the movie, yeah, but he's not showing here. Neither is Zoe Saldana is not listed.
They both did, but maybe that's just a case of, my guess is that they'll be back in some fashion. Maybe they'll get, uncredited type of cameo appearances in this.
The two characters from Guardians are Rocket and Drax are the only two
who listed. I think both made it.
No Groot.
He was wiped away too at the end of the last one.
He was. Oh, I take that back. They have Teen Groot in here.
Teen Groot. Okay.
So not Vin Diesel.
Gotcha.
That's a different person.
This is going to be the movie to see. Not everybody likes these type of movies. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but you have to respect Marvel, or marvel at Marvel, for what they've been able to do with these characters in this franchise. Like I said, it's unprecedented in movie making history, and to the point where other studios have now tried to emulate it without much success. See Warner Brothers and DC and some of their missteps. My guess is once the movie comes out, we will have a podcast, I think, and devote it specifically to a review. That would be a good conversation when the time comes. But for the moment, I think that is a pretty good look at the movies up until May. At that point, that'll be a good time for us to look in April to talk about Avengers once we see it, and to look ahead at movies that we'll be seeing over the summer, because we've only touched the surface of some of the big stuff that's going to be coming out. We're going to have a lot of big movies still for the remainder of the year. Like you said, more reboots, more sequels, more things we didn't ask for, and some other movies we're going to be really looking forward to. And of course, the big one eventually we'll be talking about for the end of the year will be Star Wars Episode 9. I'm not sure if we'll get to that on our next movie podcast whenever that comes.
Well, I would guess our next movie podcast would probably be in February, discussing the Oscars.
That's true. We will have the Oscars coming up, so that'll be some more discussion. But I think that's a good place to call it.
Sure. We'll be back later this week with our Super Bowl preview. But until then, we will catch you the next time. Thanks for tuning in, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Excruciating Minutiae Podcast. Check us out at excruciatingpodcast.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on any of your favorite podcast platforms and follow us on Twitter at excruciatingpod. See you at the next episode.